until recently, I thought that passionate people always loved what they did. But what if I told you that wasn't the case? My passion is creative writing. I've been writing since I could and telling stories for even longer. I've won a writing contest, I've been published in an online journal, and I'm publishing a short story collection later this year. I've always thought of writing as my one artistic love and, well, passion. A career in the literary arts has been something that I have wanted since I was young. And the email that I got one fateful night last October was my chance to jumpstart my literary career. It said that a literary journal was hosting its fall writing contest. The prompt? To modernize a myth or legend. Having just submitted to another writing contest and with nothing to do, I said, yeah, let's do it. Little did I know that the journey of writing this piece for this writing contest would become one of the most transformative experiences of my life. Like many people, back then I thought that my definition of passion was pretty much simply something that I liked. That's how I felt about my passion, but the struggles that I went through to create this piece for this writing contest proved to me that that wasn't always the case. The piece that I wrote was called En Brynhild, a modernization of a Norse myth. In the myth, Sigurd and Brynhild are tragically fated lovers, destined to die if they're together. Brynhild, able to see the future, realizes that her relationship with Sigurd will end the both of them and decides to push Sigurd away. En Brynhild is a modernization of Brynhild's decision to push Sigurd away, taking place in a bathroom at a party as Brynhild wishes her situation was different. Originally, the piece started out in Old Norse. I'm serious. The first line was Sigurdur og Brynhildr aldri Brynhildr elgi Sigurd, which literally translates to Sigurd and Brynhild, never Brynhild, not Sigurd. Then it was in Old Norse. Then it was in third person, and then it had nothing to do with a party or a relationship or the myth of Sigurd and Brynhild at all. It was everything and nothing at the same time, and it wasn't working. For the first time in my memory, I struggled with creative writing. I wasn't having fun. Nights were spent frustrated with the piece that wouldn't coalesce, and days were wrecked with imposter syndrome. I didn't know if I'd be able to write a piece of this caliber. But here's where the transformation begins. For almost every piece I've written before En Brynhild, ideas flowed easily. What I thought the piece was going to be ended up being what the piece became. But that wasn't the case with En Brynhild. En Brynhild was difficult to write, and doing so made me uncomfortable, but I had to push through. I had a deadline for the piece and a possible publication on the line. So I persevered, and eventually my muse returned. But I wouldn't stop thinking that I couldn't call myself a writer because I had that hiccup. I wasn't enjoying the process, and our passions are things that we like to do, right? But what if they're not? The word passion has been described in many different ways, and only one aligns with the one that many people believe it to be, which is bliss, happiness, or contentment. Suffering, emotion, and, well, as we know, love are also possible definitions. Let's slow it down a moment. Suffering, love, aren't those two direct opposites? You can't suffer through something you love, right? That's counterintuitive. And yet, the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I'll give an analogy here. Say passion's a person, maybe a sibling. Sometimes you like it, and sometimes it's the bane of your existence, but there's still love behind everything. You can hate conversations with passion, and you can hate the frustration passion causes, but you never hate your passion itself. That was the case with En Brynhild, and that was my first realization with the story. And shortly after my enlightenment, the words began to flow. In fact, I wrote the entire first draft of En Brynhild in a few hours on a Saturday afternoon. My realization allowed me to push past the hardship the passion was giving me and into a state of flow. Enter Act 2, editing. En Brynhild was the first long-term piece that I had ever set to edit. Coming off the high from draft 1, I was prepared to continue to draft 2. But once again, I fell into a spot of passion that didn't feel like it fit the definition. I wasn't suffering like before. My head was above the water, but I wasn't thriving like I thought I should have been either. The story kept changing. A character's name went from Becky to Beckhild to Beck to Beckhild again. The beginning was created, deleted, then recreated. The last line was the same as the first line, and then it was different. I was feeling all of these emotions because I loved and resented my piece at the same time, and none of them were ones that I associated with passion. But that's passion's second definition. Emotion. Passion is suffering, yes, but also an emotion, a feeling. Of course, passion causes emotions other than what is expected of it because passions are reflections of our mental states, which fluctuate with different emotions. The expectation of always loving your passion doesn't cover the full spectrum of human emotion. And so I worked harder with my emotion to create a more well-rounded view of Anne Brynhild. If I felt uninspired, I looked at it through the lens of someone who felt that way. If I felt cheery and free, I'd look at it that way. Incorporating emotion into my editing process allowed me to see Anne Brynhild in a different light. I finished it, and it was my magnum opus. Only after going through suffering and emotion could I reach a state of pure bliss. I submitted Anne Brynhild a week before the due date and waited. At that point, the story had been shared with my mother, my father, and many of my mother's friends. I even sent it to my English teacher. I felt as though I was the greatest artist alive and used that momentum to keep writing, to keep submitting. Months later, I got an email from the literary magazine. Here's what it said. Rejection. I was devastated. I had spent all this time on a piece, had gone through all the definitions of passion, had struggled so hard and come out a better person for it, only to have my work thrown back in my face, which was most likely a copy and pasted email. Was I wrong to be passionate about writing? Were my realizations along the journey of Anne Brynhild null and void? I cried that night. But then I realized. Passions aren't just what we like to do. They aren't family members or best friends. They aren't a list of steps to go through before reaching perfection. Passion's a cycle. Passion flows up and down like suffering, like emotion, like absolute enamorment. We aren't always suffering, we aren't always feeling the same emotions, we don't always love what we do. Each time we go through the cycle of suffering, emotion, and love, we come out on the other side with a new perspective, a new four-dimensional definition of passion. And with my new definition, with its cyclical nature, I decided to write. Publications came rolling in. So from now on, I know that each time I'm struggling with my passion, it's not because it's the wrong one. I'm just going through suffering or emotion, and I'm on my way to love. And maybe it's like that for you too. Thank you.